The attorney's voice droned on, but I barely heard the words. Something about final wishes and distribution of assets. I sat in the leather chair across from Mr. Hammond's desk, my sister Victoria beside me. The manila folder lay open between us, and I watched his finger trace down the document. "The house goes to Victoria Sullivan," he said. My stomach dropped. The savings account, the lakefront property, the investments, all to Victoria. I glanced at my sister. She wasn't looking at me. Her lips curved into the smallest smile, like she'd won something. Mr. Hammond cleared his throat. "And for Iris Sullivan." He slid a single envelope across the desk. "A letter from your mother, and her suggestion that you move forward with your life." The room tilted. 5 years of caring for Mom while Victoria lived 3 states away. 5 years of missed opportunities, postponed dreams, sleepless nights. And this was my inheritance, a letter and a polite dismissal. Outside the law office, Victoria finally looked at me. The autumn wind whipped her perfectly styled hair across her face. She reached out and pulled me into a hug that felt more like a victory lap. "I know this is hard," she whispered against my ear, but her voice carried no real sympathy. "But you were always too soft for this kind of responsibility anyway." Mom knew I could handle it better. I stood frozen in her embrace, unable to form words. She pulled back, squeezed my shoulders like a coach consoling a losing player. "You'll be fine, Iris. You always land on your feet." She walked toward her rental car, heels clicking on the pavement. I watched her drive away, the red taillights disappearing around the corner. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger yet. Something quieter. More dangerous. I decided right then, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't cry. I would let her believe she'd won. Silence would be my weapon. Back at my small apartment, I sat on the couch Mom had given me years ago. The memories crashed over me like waves. I remembered the first seizure, how I'd found Mom collapsed in the kitchen. Victoria had been at a conference in Seattle. I remembered the hospital visits, the medication schedules, the slow decline. Every weekend for 5 years, I'd driven to Mom's house. I'd cooked her meals, managed her appointments, held her hand through the scary nights. Victoria visited twice a year, always with expensive gifts and dramatic entrances. She'd sweep in with flowers and stories about her marketing career, take selfies with Mom, post them with captions about family love. Then she'd leave, and I'd still be there, changing sheets and refilling pill organizers. This wasn't just about money. This was erasure. Victoria had rewritten history, and somehow, Mom had believed it. I opened the envelope Mr. Hammond had given me. Mom's handwriting covered a single page. "My dearest Iris, I know this seems unfair, but Victoria needs this more than you. She's struggled financially, and you've always been the strong one. Please understand and move forward. Love always, Mom." I read it 3 times. Something felt wrong. The words were correct, but the voice wasn't. Mom never called me dearest. She called me Iris Flower. She never said, "Move forward." She said, "Keep growing." The letter felt like someone imitating Mom, hitting the right notes but missing the melody. I grabbed my laptop and searched for the original will. Mom had mentioned updating it 2 years ago, during a good spell before the final decline. She'd been lucid then, sharp as ever. What had she really wanted? The next morning, I drove to Mom's house, Victoria's house now. She was still in California, planning her move. I still had my key. Inside, everything looked the same but felt different, like a museum of my own life. I went to Mom's office, the small room where she'd managed the family finances for decades. Victoria hadn't touched it yet. The filing cabinet stood in the corner, dust gathering on top. I pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside were folders organized by year, every document labeled in Mom's neat handwriting. Bank statements, tax returns, insurance policies. And at the very back, beneath everything else, a sealed manila envelope. Both our names were written across the front in Mom's hand, Victoria and Iris, to be opened together. My heart hammered. I held the envelope up to the window light. It had never been opened. I sat at Mom's desk and carefully broke the seal. Inside was a letter dated 18 months ago, shortly after Mom's diagnosis became serious. "My darling girls," it began. Already, the voice was different, warmer, more like her. "I'm writing this while my mind is still clear. I want you both to know that I've divided everything equally. The house will be sold, and you'll split the proceeds. Same with all assets. I've worked hard to be fair." My hands trembled as I continued reading. "I know you're different people with different strengths. Victoria, you're brilliant and ambitious. Iris, you're steady and kind. I love you both the same. That's why everything is split down the middle. But, and this is important, if either of you tries to take more than your share, the truth is already documented with someone I trust. Honesty matters more than money." The letter was signed with a little flower next to Mom's name, the way she always signed birthday cards for me. 3 weeks later, Victoria threw a housewarming party at Mom's house, her house. I drove up the familiar driveway, past the oak tree I'd climbed as a child. Inside, Victoria had already redecorated. New paint, new furniture, all traces of Mom carefully erased and replaced with Victoria's sleek, modern aesthetic. "Iris." She greeted me with champagne and introduced me to her friends as my little sister who helped out so much. Little sister. Helper. Not equal. Not partner in grief. Friends congratulated her on the beautiful inheritance and complimented her taste. I smiled. I toasted. I complimented the renovations. Victoria glowed under the attention, holding court in Mom's living room like a queen in her castle. But I noticed something she'd missed. Mom's office door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see the filing cabinet. Its bottom drawer wasn't quite closed. Someone had been looking through it. Recently. The next morning, I called Mr. Hammond's office and requested copies of all estate documents. "I just want to review everything," I said, keeping my voice calm and pleasant. "For my records." There was a pause. "That's certainly you're right," he said slowly. "Though the will has been executed already. I understand. I'd still like copies. Foreclosure." Another pause. "I'll have my assistant prepare them. Give us a few days." His unease was obvious. I thanked him and hung up. When the documents arrived, I spread them across my kitchen table. The will was dated 6 months ago, during Mom's worst decline. She'd been on heavy medication then, barely able to sign her name. I compared the signature to older documents. The slant was different. The pressure uneven. But what caught my attention was the date. Mom's calendar, which I still had photos of, showed she was in the hospital that day, sedated after a bad episode. I remembered Thomas Brennan, Mom's financial advisor for 20 years. He'd handled her investments since before Dad died. I found his number in Mom's old address book and called. "Iris. God, I'm so sorry about your mother." His voice was warm, familiar. We talked about Mom for a while, sharing memories. Then I asked, casually, "Did Mom ever mention updating her will?" "She talked about making sure things were fair." Thomas went quiet. "She did, actually. About 2 years ago, she drafted something with me as witness. Wanted everything split equally between you girls. She was very clear about that." My pulse quickened. "What happened to that draft?" I'm not sure. She said her lawyer would file it officially. But he hesitated. "I kept copies just in case. Old habits from years of financial work. I think they're still in my storage files." 2 weeks later, Thomas called. His voice was strained. "Iris, I'm sorry. I went looking for those documents, but I can't find them anywhere. I must have purged them during a move." My heart sank. "Are you sure? I've looked everywhere." "I'm really sorry. I know this mattered to you." After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The trail had gone cold. Without that draft, I had nothing but suspicions and a letter Mom never intended to be found. Victoria called that night, chatty and bright. "I'm thinking of putting in a pool. Mom would have loved that, don't you think?" I made agreeable sounds while my mind raced with defeat. She'd won. Completely. The story was over before it really began. Everyone would think I was just a bitter sister who couldn't accept reality. I almost gave up. Almost. 3 days later, an unknown number called. "Is this Iris Sullivan?" A woman's voice, young and uncertain. Yes. This is Melissa Brennan, Thomas Brennan's daughter. I'm sorry to call like this, but my father passed away yesterday. Heart attack. The room spun. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Thank you. We're going through his things, and I found a box with your name on it. Well, not your name exactly. It says, Sullivan Estate, backup copies. Dad left me a note saying if anything happened to him, I should give this to you. I gripped the phone. A box. Papers. Legal documents, looks like. Dad wrote that he promised your mother he'd keep copies, just in case someone tried to rewrite history. His words. I don't really understand, but do you want to come get it? I was in my car within 5 minutes. Melissa handed me the box in her father's study. Inside were file folders, each labeled in Thomas's neat handwriting. The top one read Sullivan Estate, original draft. I opened it with shaking hands. There it was. A will dated 2 years ago, witnessed by Thomas Brennan and Mom's neighbor Mrs. Chen. Everything split equally. House to be sold, proceeds divided. Savings split 50-50. Even Mom's jewelry was itemized for fair distribution. I took the documents to an independent estate attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Walsh who came highly recommended. She reviewed everything for 2 hours, comparing signatures, checking dates, cross-referencing with the probated will. Finally, she looked up. This is legitimate. And the will that was probated has irregularities. The signature doesn't match earlier documents, and the dating is suspicious. She leaned back in her chair. Someone altered your mother's wishes after she became incapacitated. This is fraud. I sat in Catherine's office. The evidence spread before me. I could go public immediately, post everything on social media, destroy Victoria's reputation in an afternoon. The thought was tempting. But Mom's voice echoed in my memory. Choose kindness when you can, but never let anyone mistake it for weakness. I didn't want chaos. I wanted justice. Catherine nodded approvingly when I explained my approach. We'll do this properly. File a formal challenge. Present evidence through the courts. It's slower, but it's airtight. Will it work? If what you've shown me holds up under scrutiny, and I believe it will, then yes. The will can be invalidated and the estate redistributed according to your mother's actual wishes. I signed the paperwork to retain her services. The law was finally on my side. But I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for Mom, and for the truth she'd asked to be protected. The legal notice arrived at Victoria's house on a Tuesday. I know, because she called me 90 seconds after signing for it, her voice shaking with rage. What the hell is this, Iris? You're contesting the will? After everything Mom wrote in that letter to you. I kept my voice level. I'm correcting an error. An error? You're just bitter. You can't accept that Mom trusted me more. Actually, Mom trusted us equally. You should read the documents attached to that notice. She made a strangled sound. You're being greedy. This is pathetic. If you think I'm wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. The courts will decide. You can't do this. I'll fight you. I expect you will. I hung up. My hands were steady. For 5 years, I'd absorbed Victoria's dismissiveness, her casual cruelty disguised as concern. Not anymore. She'd underestimated me, assumed my silence meant acceptance. She was about to learn the difference. The first deposition was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Catherine warned me that Victoria's attorney would be aggressive, would try to paint me as unstable or money-hungry. But something happened before we reached that stage. Victoria's lawyer, the same Mr. Hammond who'd read the will, requested a private meeting with Catherine. I wasn't present, but Catherine called me afterward, surprise in her voice. Hammond is withdrawing from the case. What? Can he do that? He can, and he did. He reviewed the evidence we submitted and realized his position is indefensible. He said, and I quote, I cannot represent a case built on fraudulent documents. Victoria was alone now, scrambling to find new representation. But word had gotten around in the legal community. 3 firms turned her down. Under scrutiny, the inconsistencies in her story were becoming impossible to ignore. She posted on social media about family betrayal and ungrateful siblings, but the comments were mixed. People were starting to ask questions. Mrs. Chen, Mom's neighbor for 30 years, called me one evening. Iris, honey, I need to tell you something. She'd been at Mom's house the day Victoria came to help Mom with paperwork, 6 months before Mom died. Your mother was heavily medicated that day. I remember because I brought over soup, and Victoria asked me to leave because her mother needed rest. But I heard them talking, or rather, Victoria talking and your mother making confused sounds. My chest tightened. Did you see anything? I saw Victoria with papers spread across the kitchen table. Legal documents. Your mother's hand was shaking, and Victoria was guiding it across the page. Other people started coming forward. Mom's home healthcare nurse remembered Victoria visiting alone on several occasions, always asking the nurse to give them privacy. The pharmacist recalled Victoria picking up Mom's medications, asking about dosages and side effects. The narrative was shifting. People who'd admired Victoria's devotion were now questioning it. At the grocery store, I overheard 2 women talking. I always thought it was strange how she got everything after Iris did all the work. Victoria called at 2 in the morning. I almost didn't answer. Iris. Her voice was different, smaller, desperate. We need to talk. It's 2 a.m. Please. I want to settle this. Out of court. I sat up in bed. I'm listening. I'll give you 30%. 30% of everything. We can make this go away. 30% of what should have been 50. No. 40 then. 40% and we're done. Victoria, this isn't a negotiation. What do you want? To destroy me? Is that it? I want what Mom actually intended. Equal shares. That's all I've ever wanted. She was crying now. Please, Iris. I've already made plans. I've invested in the renovations. I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you altered Mom's will. I hung up. The power had shifted, and she felt it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Catherine presented the evidence methodically. The original will, Thomas's testimony via his sworn affidavit, the signature analysis from 3 different experts. The handwriting specialists showed side-by-side comparisons on a screen. The signature on the probated will was rushed, shaky, inconsistent with Mom's other signatures from that time period. This signature shows signs of guided hand forgery, one expert testified. Someone held the deceased's hand and moved it across the page. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her designer suit perfect, her face pale. Her new attorney objected repeatedly, but weakly. There was no defense against documentation. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, reviewed everything in silence. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear Victoria's breathing from across the room. Finally, the judge spoke. I'm ruling the probated will invalid due to evidence of fraud and undue influence during incapacitation. The gavel came down, and everything froze. All assets currently distributed under the contested will are hereby frozen pending proper probate proceedings. A new distribution will be executed according to the authenticated will dated 24 months prior. Victoria made a sound. Half gasp, half sob. The judge continued, addressing her directly. Mrs. Sullivan's daughter knowingly exploited her mother's diminished capacity for personal gain. While criminal charges are not within this court's jurisdiction, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for review. Catherine squeezed my hand under the table. It was over. Not completely. There would be paperwork, redistribution, the slow machinery of legal resolution. But the truth had won. Mom's voice had been heard. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Victoria pushed past them, sunglasses hiding her face. I gave a brief statement. My mother's wishes have been honored. That's all that matters. The story made local news that night. Victoria had 30 days to vacate Mom's house. I drove by one afternoon and saw the for sale sign. The pool she'd planned was half dug, now just a muddy hole in the backyard. Through the window, I could see moving boxes. Her friends had disappeared. The social media posts praising her had turned to silence. The comments on her older posts were different now. This aged poorly and always knew something was off. I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected. Just a quiet, sad relief. Victoria had done this to herself. She'd gambled on my silence, on my softness, on the assumption that I'd accept whatever scraps she threw. She'd lost not because I'd destroyed her, but because the truth had a weight she couldn't escape. The house sold quickly. The proceeds, along with all other assets, entered probate for proper distribution. It would take months, but Catherine assured me everything was moving forward correctly this time. Late one night, 3 weeks after the judgment, my phone rang. Victoria. I stared at the screen, debating. Finally, I answered. Iris. Her voice was hoarse. I need help. Silence. I'm broke. The legal fees wiped me out. I'm losing my apartment in California. I waited. Please. Can you loan me something? Just to get back on my feet. The irony was suffocating. She'd told me to move on when she'd taken everything. Now she was asking me to rescue her. Victoria, I can't help you. Please. I'm your sister. I made a mistake, but you didn't make a mistake. My voice was steady now, certain. You made a choice. You altered Mom's will while she was dying. You erased 5 years of my caregiving. You told me I was too soft for responsibility. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, okay? I was desperate. My business was failing, and you decided your desperation mattered more than Mom's wishes. More than our relationship. More than basic honesty. She was sobbing. I know. I know what I did. But please, I have nowhere else to go. I let her cry for a moment. Then I spoke, choosing each word carefully. I'll offer you something, Victoria. Not money. Not rescue. But honesty. What do you mean? I'll split Mom's estate with you, exactly as she intended. 50-50. You'll get your fair share. But you could fight for more. After what I did, I could. But I won't. Because this isn't about revenge. It's about doing what Mom actually wanted. She went quiet. There's a condition, I continued. You have to face what you did. Fully. No excuses about business failures or desperation. You have to acknowledge that you tried to steal from me, that you exploited Mom when she was most vulnerable. Iris, if you can't do that, then we have nothing to discuss. Ever. The line was silent for a long moment. Then, very quietly, okay. You're right. I did those things. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. We'll split everything as Mom intended, I said. After that, whether we have any relationship is up to you. 6 months later, the final distribution was complete. The house had sold for more than expected. Combined with savings, investments, and the lakefront property, the estate was worth nearly $1 million. Victoria received her half through a certified check, delivered by Catherine's office. I received mine the same way. Mom's jewelry was divided piece by piece, each of us choosing items in turns. I took the pearl necklace Mom wore on her wedding day. Victoria took the emerald ring. We didn't speak during the division. We didn't need to. The money sat in my account, surreal and heavy. I didn't rush to spend it. Instead, I paid off my student loans, set up a scholarship fund in Mom's name, and started looking at small houses. Nothing flashy. Just a place that was mine. Justice didn't feel loud or triumphant. It felt quiet. Like standing in a room after years of noise and finally hearing yourself breathe. I thought about Mom often. I hoped she knew the truth had survived. I bought a modest house on the edge of town, with a garden where I could plant vegetables and flowers. Mom would have loved it. I painted the bedroom her favorite shade of blue. I hung family photos in the hallway, real ones, not the curated version Victoria had presented to the world. I started taking classes again, something I'd postponed during the caregiving years. Photography. I'd always wanted to learn. My life wasn't dramatic anymore. No legal battles, no betrayals, no courtrooms, just quiet mornings with coffee, evening walks, the slow work of rebuilding myself. Friends I'd lost touch with started calling again. We heard what happened, they said carefully. Are you okay? I was better than okay. I was free. Victoria and I hadn't spoken since the final distribution. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved back to California, taken a lower-level job, started over. I didn't wish her ill. I didn't wish her anything. She was simply gone from my life, and that was enough. Sometimes I reread Mom's original letter, the one she'd left with Thomas. Choose honesty, even when it's hard. Stand up, even when you're tired. Never let anyone make you smaller than you are. I used to think I was the soft one, the weak one, the daughter who bent and accommodated and disappeared. But I'd learned something important. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's strength waiting for the right moment. Victoria had mistaken my quietness for defeat. She'd assumed I'd accept her narrative and fade away. Instead, I'd stood up, gathered evidence, and let the truth speak. I didn't destroy her. She'd done that herself. I simply refused to shrink. On the anniversary of Mom's death, I planted roses in my garden. One for every year she'd lived. 56 roses, red and white, arranged in careful rows. I knelt in the dirt, my hands in the soil, and felt connected to something larger than inheritance or justice. I felt connected to the woman who'd raised me to be kind, but never to be small. And I finally understood her final lesson. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can offer. Until it's time to speak.